Next thing we're gonna do is we've got this all ground clean. We got the galvanized coating, which I believe it is galvanized. If it isn't, then that's my mistake. But we've got it all cleaned up in the areas that we're gonna be welding. The only area that we can't get to is on the interior, but I have a die grinder, so I'm probably gonna put the, I have metal prepping pads is what they're called. I'll probably put one of the rough pads on my die grinder and reach in there and try to get on the interior, because I don't want that rust to cause any issues with the weld penetrating, considering this is obviously an important area and the last thing we want is for a weld to feld here. So we'll probably do that to prep the interior. Then once we get the receiver welded on, which I'm probably going to time lapse it, because like I said, I'm going to weld across the three sides on the back. I'm going to do a stitch on the front edge on each side on the bottom, which what I mean is right on this edge, we're probably going to run a small weld right to the front edge. And you can see how I've got the receiver stuck in that far. Most people do it about right there. But for me, I want all the clearance I can get. That still allows more than enough room for this piece here to function properly, as you can see. So that's where we're going to put it. I'm going to put two small welds right on this front edge on each side. Then we're going to come over here. We're going to go all the way around that area. Then we're going to do a spot weld here. We're going to do a spot weld here and on each side. And that should be more than enough to hold it on. Like more than enough. That's probably overkill. But the way I am, I'm probably going to end up plug welding each hole, every hole that's on the receiver, just because aesthetically I think it looks better. Just plug the holes, weld them completely full, and then we'll just paint it. But other than that, we're making pretty good headway on this thing. Then after we get that on, we got to get the safety chain welded on, but I need to put on the receiver first so I can measure the length of the safety chain to make sure I get enough on each side. Then the next thing we're probably going to do is fix this jack where it's blown out on the bottom, which that'll just be heating it up, beating it back together, and putting a small weld there to keep it from splitting again. Then that'll be done, and our last step as far as getting it ready for what I need it for here, the most recent, will be running the new wiring down the length of the frame and getting our new lights put on the back. And I have a couple marker lights I bought. The kit I bought came with 2 marker lights. I went and bought 2 more because I'd like to put marker lights on the front and back of each fender, at least for while they're here. Then once I get rid of the fenders, I'll probably set the marker lights up on the side of the deck, because once I widen the deck, obviously I may just overdo the fenders with the deck, because that'll keep the deck from rotting out from the tires throwing water and other stuff up on it. But if I do that, I'm gonna have to reshape them for sure, and probably add in some more fender bracing just to help support it, to keep them getting damaged again. But other than that, like I said, I'm gonna set y'all back up on the time lapse. I'm gonna get to welding on this receiver. And then when we're done with that, I'm probably going to start cleaning it up with the grinder. Then I'll bring y'all back and we'll start measuring out the length for a safety chain. From what I read online, you need to allow yourself, like, I don't know, from what people are saying, I read a maximum of 18 inches. And then I read a minimum of 10 to 12. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to have to reread the article. But the ideal placement is 1 foot from the tip of the receiver on your trailer. They're saying give yourself 12 inches from there, and that's obviously where the 18 inches comes in, because up to 18 inches at a 12-inch mounting place for your safety chain. So 18 inches will compensate for turning radius. You're going to need extra chain for the turns, but you don't want so much chain that it's going to allow the tongue of the trailer to dig into the ground if it comes unhooked. So we're going to give ourselves just enough to keep it off the ground, and enough for us to be able to practically turn it to a jackknife. We want the chain to stop us prior to a jackknife, because if the safety chain catches at that point, which I don't even know if that's possible, but we're going to try it. if the chain catches, that's something you will feel in the truck. The chain will become taut and it'll say, hey man, you're trying to turn too sharp, stop. So we're gonna do that. So, like I said, I know I'm saying it again, but we're gonna put you back up on the time lapse, we're gonna weld it solid, clean it up, and then we'll bring you back to start figuring out the safety chain stuff. Alright, as you can see, we got it welded up and I ground it down. The beads didn't look bad, I just aesthetically, once you paint over top of a weld, the weld, I never think they look as good. I'd just rather smooth down the surface and make it look good. Right in here, the reason this bead's so much wider, there was a gap, so I had to stack 2 beads in order to close that gap up. But I rounded the corners with them. That spot right there, I kind of missed a little. That's why it looks like that. Then I put the little welds in the front. I put another weld on this bottom piece here, just so the corners wouldn't catch. But like I said, I plugged every hole. Did the same on this side once it focuses. And now that is that. That should be overly secured, and we should never have to worry about it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get out the tape measure, measure about 12 inches back on the neck, or I don't know, probably closer to 10. We ain't going to go that far back. But we're going to measure anywhere from 10 inches back from the tip of the receiver. We're going to put our mark, and then we're going to start measuring out our safety chain length, and we're going to get that attached. And I have an idea for attaching it. What I would like to do is, hang on a second here. I'm debating on cutting this ring off and welding the ring on, then cutting open the links on the chain and hooking them into this, and then re-welding the chain link shut. But I could also use something like this. But what I've been thinking about is possibly using these in order to attach the hooks I have to put on the end of this chain, because I didn't buy any rings or anything. Ideally, I would hope I could find something like that hook point right there, which is just a metal round that I would fold over, run the chain through it once I weld the ring on. I would like to do that, but you know, it is what it is. I'm all about telling y'all to try and recycle, reuse, you know, save money. You don't have to buy everything new. You can buy things used and turn them into whatever you would like them to be. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk over to my scrap pile here, my little pile of metal I have, and if we don't find something over here, we'll go out and look in the bed of my truck. So we're just going to look through and see if we find something. Which, this plate is pretty tough. It's relatively thick stuff, as you can see. We may be able to cut something off of that, or cut another piece off of this mower blade here. We could punch a hole in it. But overall, from the looks of things, it looks like our only options would be, well, there's a wastegate ring there if we cut that off, but I'm worried that wouldn't be tough enough if the trailer's loaded. And we got a bearing in here. Looks like an old, I don't know what that is, an old hub bearing. What is this? Well, that's a pretty big bearing there. If we could knock that core out, that would be nice to use. But, once again, that's all more work than we necessarily have to do. So, what I'd said to you all earlier was we were just going to take and weld 3 links onto the head of this trailer. And that would be where we would take it. Just take the 3 links, wrap them around, and call it good. So, let me get you set back up here. That may very well be what we do. Alright, but we're going to bust out our tape measure here. And from the nose, 12 inches is right in front of that handle. So we're going to take our marker, reline it up here, and about right in there is 12 inches. So now I'm going to grab our chain here, which before we weld it, we will have to clean it up. We're going to see what kind of length one side has. Because 12 inches, that's enough to go to the ground. Even once hooked to the truck. So, we have an excess of chain. That much is obvious. So let's actually measure that once we get it folded in half. Alright, so that's 30 inches. From the bottom to the top is about 30 inches. So that's well over what we need. 12 inches, they say, so that'd be 24, would be the maximum. Well, I have an idea on how to get our hooks attached, considering we have so much extra chain. We'll just feed a link through the chain, wrap it back around itself, and weld it onto itself. So we'd make a little ring kind of like that, and then we could feed the hooks right through it. So, alright, I stopped y'all there. I went ahead over there and I kind of cleaned up these 3 links, because this is the center of the chain. So, what I'm thinking on doing, because this link has a bolt in it, we're going to cut these 3 links out. That's going to shorten the chain that much. And then we can take 2 links, weld them directly to the side of the tongue, pointing down, because we want the chains to come from the bottom and loop up. And once we cut those 3 links out, that should be, let's say 3 to 4 inches. That's going to shorten it down to roughly the length that we're looking for. And from that point, we'll start figuring out how we're going to attach this thing. There are other ways. Like we can go to the store, buy a D-ring, weld the D-ring on. I can steal a ring off of something else. But what I think we're going to end up doing is just welding the chain directly to the frame. And we're going to weld around the outside edge of the link, then weld through the interior of the link. And that should be more than solid enough. If anything ever goes wrong, the chains will catch the trailer and allow me to get it stopped before anything goes catastrophically wrong. So, with that being said, I'm going to go. We're going to cut these 2 links out, cut this link out, measure the length, and see if that's short enough. We're going to shoot for about 20 inches, 24 max. And that should be enough with a 12-inch reach on the tongue to give us more than enough safety chain that if anything goes wrong, it'll keep the head of the trailer from going into the ground. And, you know, that'll essentially be like dropping an anchor. We don't want that to happen. So, and that'll give us time to be able to safely get it stopped and address the problem without causing a catastrophic failure. Alright, so I got this chain cut, and what we're going to do now is we're going to get it clamped up here, roughly about like that. We're going to try to get these first 2 links turned a little bit, so that way we can weld around them. And then we're just gonna, well, we can probably get away with just doing the one length there. And like I said, we're gonna weld around it and in it, just to make sure we get it held on there securely. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna clamp them in place so that way they don't move. I'm gonna get a tack on each chain link so that way I can remove the clamp and they will be held in place. I may have to do this one at a time, which that's okay. We can do that. So we're gonna slide it back a little more than 12 inches because these links are fairly long. We're gonna get it tight and we're gonna crank it down. Oop. Yeah, I should probably invest in some different style clamps, but hey, I like these clamps. They're very nice for woodwork. I mean, metal fabrication. So we're just gonna tighten it up and then we're gonna call it good. Alright, so there's that chain. Like I said, I'm gonna get a tack put on this. We're gonna get the other side set up and tacked on. Then we're gonna weld around it, in it, grind it clean. We'll be ready to paint it. And this trailer's ready to rock other than the lights. Then after I get done with using it for this job, I'm planning on putting another deck on it. And we're gonna paint the entire frame while the deck's off and address a couple other issues. So I'm gonna put y'all on a time lapse. We're gonna knock the rest of this welding and chain out. Like I said, we're gonna grind it down, pretty it up, paint it, and then we're gonna be ready to pull it out. Oh, all right, so we got our safety chains welded on. This thing will focus. And you can see I went around and through, but I left enough room for both sides next link to be able to move freely. I feel like that is more than enough to get the job done. So what we're gonna do, well, not what we're gonna do. So that pretty much takes care of that step. I guess the next thing I'm gonna do is, instead of trying to get the hooks I have to work, I am just going to go to the local farm supply store and try to find some hooks that I can either bolt on, put a pin through like with a chains hook or something along those lines. I just feel like that's a better idea and it'll be overall safer considering it's made for the task. So other than that, next thing I'm going to get doing is probably getting the wiring ran for the lights. But we're going to do that another day because for today I am done due to what time it is. I had to quit for a little while there in the middle, take the kiddo to gymnastics again. But overall, I'm happy with the way it is right now. But yep, next thing we're going to do is get the new lights ran, get the plug ran up here for that, get hooks put on the ends of the safety chain, and then the trailer will be ready to use. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is get the old lights taken off, which are held on with two 11mm nuts, which this one only has one. So, and you can see that that lens on the side there for, I guess it's a turning signal or just a marker light, is broke. So we've got that out. And now, where we're also going to be replacing the harness, we're just going to kind of give it a yank, and that separates that. Now we're going to go over to the other side, and we are going to be doing the same thing. So, which you can see this side is in quite a bit worse shape. So, like I said, once again, two 11mm nuts, which it looks like this one actually has both. All right. and we're getting them taken off. And like I said, we can just give them a yank, because we are also replacing the wiring, because the wiring on the front side is torn all to pieces, and I just ain't gonna mess with fixing all that. So we got that out of the way. We have a license plate holder, which we're also not going to be using. Now I gotta get this cut open here. I got these lights that I'm installing off of eBay. They were $20, if memory serves me correctly. So, that one is passenger, this is driver's, I do believe, which I'm sure it doesn't matter. Realistically, I'm sure you can put the lights on either side and it will make absolutely no difference. So we're pulling out the old wiring, we're taking our new wiring and we're sticking them through the holes here. Getting them lined up and pulled through the best we can, trying not to pinch them. And it looks like we ain't got any new hardware. Well, actually, I know I do, but I have them outside. Goodness. Alright. I'm going to slide this back off because there are nuts on here, but these nuts are holding the studs tight. One of these studs are loose, so I'm going to have to tighten that down before I get started, so that way we can actually tighten these boogers up. And yes, I did. I just said boogers. The nuts on the back of these housings are a 10mm. Which, the reason I said which side is which is because the reverse light, if you were to flip them to be for the opposite side, the reverse light would not be pointing towards the ground. So once again, we're going to feed the wires through while trying to make sure we don't have any of them pinched. Get them pulled tight and get our nuts threaded on, which, as you've seen, I just tightened up the nuts for the back of the light that are 10mm, but one thing I'll tell you to remember is this is plastic. Plastic breaks easily, so don't be going crazy, because in the end, you'll only be doing more damage to the lights you just bought. I should probably be using a ratchet wrench or something, because this is no fun. And I'm going to have to go find that new hardware or go over to my nut and bolt bin and try to find the right nuts. Because these nuts are not threading, so I'm guessing they're a different thread pitch. So I will be right back. Alright, so I got the bag of hardware. Alright, and these are definitely not the right nuts. But I don't see how you're supposed to mount these if you use the nuts that are on the back of the light, considering the stud spins freely. So, I guess we're just going to have to try and see. So we're taking the nuts that I tightened onto the back of the lights, because these studs just kind of fall out without them. Which I was really thinking that that wasn't going to be the case, but from the looks of things, that is absolutely the case. Yep, so we're taking these two 10mm nuts off the back. Well, I guess that's why they were so cheap on eBay, right? Hey. Alright, and now that we got that figured out, we are going to, for the last time, shove these wires back through the hole, get our studs punched through, and tighten down these lights. But, like I said, these studs are kind of free floating now. So I'm going to have to be conscious of that while I do it, and hope that we can get this threaded on without too much of an issue or hassle here. So what I'm doing is kind of putting tension on the light mount here, so that way it'll hold the stud so I can try to tighten these nuts without the studs spinning in the light housing. And hopefully that'll take care of it. Hopefully with enough tension we'll actually be able to get them tightened down without too much of a problem. But from the way it's going so far, it don't seem like it's going to be that easy. Alright, we're on to getting it started on the nut number 2, which obviously we haven't tightened it down. But from the way things are going, I'm going to put you all on a time lapse and we're just going to try to fire through this. Alright, so the new lights are installed. One thing I'll give it is there's only a reverse marker on one side. Other than that, I do think that alone is a pretty big improvement. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to get the wiring ran, get them hooked to the plug for the truck, and that'll be that. So, but for now, we're going to call it here, and we'll see you all tomorrow.